Testing, 1, 2, 3. Is the sound okay? Cool. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Claus Ibsen, and welcome to this talk about Apache Camel. So here is the agenda. What is this talk is being covered? At first, I'm going to talk about what is Apache Camel, and then we're going to see a little example. Then we're going to see how you can get started using Camel. And then we take a look at what other features and functionality that the Camel provides out of the box. Then I'm briefly going to talk a bit about where and how you can deploy and run Camel in which containers, environments, and so forth. And towards the end of the talk, if we have some time, so I'll give you some pointers how you can actually create custom Camel components and use them in your projects. And at the end of the talk, there's time for Q&A. Okay. Just a few more notes about myself. I'm a software engineer from WordTribe. I came through the FuseSource acquisition. I've been working for FuseSource for 4 years and with Camel for about 5 years. I'm also a co-author of the Camel in Action book together with Jonathan Anstey, who is a colleague of mine, and Jonathan is based in Canada. Okay, so what is Apache Camel? Well, to learn about a new product, it's a good idea to go to that product website and read from there. And if you go to the Camel website, we say that Camel is an open source integration framework and is based on enterprise integration patterns. So here we have two facts we're going to take a little look at: integration framework and enterprise integration patterns. So why an integration framework? Well, there is an increasing demand for integration in business today. So why is it a good idea to use an integration framework? Well, and you can kind of see an integration framework as a sort of a toolbox which has ready-made tools you can use to tackle and solve your integration problems with. As a developer, you shouldn't need to write code how to send a message to a message broker, how to upload a file to an FTP server, and so forth. No, as a developer, you should be able to focus on the business problem instead, and then let the toolbox do all the low-level plumbing for you. However, the other fact, what is enterprise integration patterns? Well, it's in fact the book with that same title. So about 10 years ago, the authors of the book, Gregor and Bobby, were consultants which went from clients to client to help them with their integration needs. And what they saw is that the same problems sort of occurring over and over again. And being a consultant, they started writing down notes about these problems and how to solve them. So after a while, they actually realized they had so much material that this could turn into a book. And this is what became the enterprise integration patterns. So in this book, we have, you can say, recipes how to solve common integration problems. And these are the recipes is what is known as enterprise integration patterns. And here on the Camel website, we have a list of all those patterns that Camel support from the book. And there's a link here you can go and read about them. We're going to see some of these patterns in this talk. For example, the content-based router, which is one of the famous patterns. So now suppose that this is a trivial example I would like to cover a bit and see how you can go use enterprise integration patterns in your architectural designs and sort of map that into code that using Camel, and you can run that in production. So let's take a moment to see how we can go from architectural design, sort of like being architects and drawing at a whiteboard. So here we have a simple example where we have some orders coming in from a queue, and then we need to route these orders depending on the type of the order. Either it should go to a widget queue or gadget queue. So what we would like to do is to write down using English words what is the solution here. The top is the graphical solution, but we would like to use words as well. So we can type from new order. Then we need to make a choice. When the order is a widget, then it should go to widget. Otherwise, it should go to gadget. Then we can add some parentheses and some dots and some semicolons, just for the fun of it. I guess you can kind of see where we're going a bit here, where this is code. This is Java code, of course. But in this Java code, we have those 4 blue ones. So let's take a moment to see what that is.
Can you also write it with XML?
Yes, the question is, this code, can you write it with XML? Yes, Camel offers a number of the DSL, which is available in different programming languages and XML. In XML, we offer 2 flavors. You can use the Spring Bean files, or you can use an OSGi Blueprint XML file as well. And we're just going to see that in a moment. So the first new order up here, that's an endpoint where the new order come in from. So we define the endpoint in the top here. And in this example, we are using a message broker, Apache ActiveMQ. Then we need to determine if this message is a widget or not. And in this example, we are routing XML message. So we can use a language called XPart to determine if this message is a widget or not. Likewise, the widget and the gadget, those are endpoints, either the widget queue or the gadget queue. Okay, so now we have a bunch of code. We need to put this Java code, we need to put it inside a method in Java. So here we put the code inside a method, and we call this method configure. A method need to be in a class, so let's put it inside the class, and we call this class myRoute. And this class extends another class called Route Builder. So what is Route Builder? Well, Route Builder is a class from Camel which allows end users to define routes in the configure method. So what we have here in total is code that can compile and run with Camel. If you've seen some of those, if you've seen Camel before, then you can also inline those endpoint definition and predicates directly into the route. So this is actually the same solution. So from you can see from an end user's point of view, we have a routing DSL here which is readable for people, for humans. I will say that if you take this code and show to someone who is not an engineer, maybe your boss, he or she will be able to have some sort of understanding of this solution. So this is a powerful feature with Camel that it allows you to abstract away all these low-level details. In this routing code here, there's no low-level code how to connect to a message broker, how to consume message from a message queue, or how to execute an XPart predicate from an XML message to figure out if it's true or not, and then send a message to another queue. All that low-level plumbing code is abstracted away in Camel. Okay.
And if I get it, it's type safe, so you can't really make an invalid routing rule.
Yes, so the question is the code is type safe, and yes, it is. There's no magic here. It's in fact just Java code. So from the compiler and tooling point of view, this is just any kind of Java code you can type. And this is just a method call that is stacked together, like the builder pattern. So if you are here if you write the first line of code and put the dot here in your editor and press Control space, your editor will smart complete and show you a list of possible methods to be executed. And those methods is the enterprise patterns in this DSL. So from this list, there's one called choice, and you choose that one. Then Camel is smart enough to say, okay, from the choice, there's a limit here. You need to add a predicate to it. And the predicate starts with the when, and so forth. So it kind of helps you on the way. One thing you have to be careful about it, just like any programming language, is to not make it too complicated. Like, it's a good practice not to have like 400 or 500 lines of code in one method. So it's kind of like a bit similar with Camel in the routes. Don't make them too very, very big. Camel allows you to split routes up into multiple pieces and then tie them together using an endpoint. Okay, so here is the same example using XML as a solution. This XML can be used in either Spring or OSGi Blueprint. And it's the same structure in either or. So what we do is define a route, and then we have the from, and then there's a choice, which is the content-based router. As you can see, we see the when here again, and here we have the XPath predicate, and it sends to this queue. So again, going from Java code to XML and back and forward, it has the similar structure, it has the same terms and whatnot, so it's learn one, and then you can easily learn the other one. And it kind of allows you to mix and match, so you can have some routes in Java code and some routes in XML, or vice versa. There's no limit. Another powerful feature with Camel is that those endpoints can easily be configured. So let's say the solution is to not pick up a message from a message queue, but pick up files instead. So all you have to do is change this to a file, which refers to the file component in Camel, and then this is dependent on the component what you type after this one. So in the file component, there you need to specify the directory where to pick up the files. And you can append parameters to the endpoint to configure this endpoint specifically. So in this example, if we want to delete the files after you have been processed, all you have to do is specify delete equals true. What Camel does by default is that after it processes a file, it will move the file to a subdirectory called .camel. But you can just easily configure that as well, or you have your choices. Each Camel component has a website where each component, or a web page, where the component is documented and all the options it provides is also documented, so you can see what you can choose. Okay, so if you have to kind of, this is a diagram for the architect people. So you kind of want to see what is Camel from a 10,000 foot perspective. Then what we have here is a piece called the Camel context. The Camel context is kind of like, is Camel. This is the Camel runtime. So the idea is that in this Camel context, you can add routes to the context. And those routes, using the enterprise integration patterns, they can use message routing, transformation, mediation, invoke business logic, and whatsoever. And then to communicate with the external world, you can use these Camel components.
Do I also understand it that one Camel context could be equal to one application context from Spring? Or
Yes, yes. Well, there's not you can have as many Camel contexts as you want, but it's kind of normal to maybe only have one and then have multiple routes. But in the Spring Bean, you can have multiple Camel contexts, if that makes sense. Or in an OSGi bundle, you can also have multiple Camel contexts, and they will be separated from each other. So it's your choice. But often we see that people have one Camel context per application, and then they just have multiple deployment units in their container because they need the logical separation between the applications. But you can have multiple. It's your choice. So speaking of components, Camel provides many components out of the box. I think it's even hard to keep track of what is the official count. We have more than 120. I guess we are towards 130 something today. And those components allows you to integrate with many number of transports and APIs and protocols. And there's a slide here with some more components. And I don't even have a slide with the rest of them. So just a quick summary, what is Apache Camel? We learned from the website that it was an integration framework. It was based on enterprise integration patterns, which was in fact a book. We learned that in Camel you can define routes where you can use those enterprise integration patterns and wire them together with your business logic and transports and whatnot to implement integration solutions. We saw that you can define endpoints in Camel very easily using URI notations. For example, it was very easy for you to switch from consuming messages from a message broker to pick up files instead. In Camel, Camel is what it called payload agnostic, which means in Camel the message payload can be any kind. It doesn't have to be tied to a certain kind. In older days, there was a tendency everything should be XML, so some message enterprise service buses and whatnot were tied into that. That's not the case with Camel. It's just a Java-lang object, so you can use string and XML or streams and bytes or whatever you want to route. Camel does not have a container dependency, which means the intent with Camel is that you can run it in sort of any kind of environment you may have your existing infrastructure. You don't need to, for example, use an enterprise application server or web container or whatever. It can run standalone or in the cloud and whatnot. I'm going to touch that in a bit later of this talk. And then people kind of value Camel because it has all these components out of the box, so you don't have to write them yourself. Okay. So let's move on to see a little example. I guess if you have to, the hello world of integration, then it will probably be something very simple like a file copy example to move files from one directory to another. So this is from the Camel in Action book where we have this example. This is the full source code for that. It's a main method. So what we do first is to create a Camel context. There's a Camel context called default Camel context. Then on this context, we can add routes to it. And we use this route builder class you saw. And here we use an inline route builder, but you can refer to a class name. So you can have a class called my routes or my cool routes or whatever, But here is inline to, have one source file. Here's the route. It's from file and to file. And then we need to start Camel. But the start method is not a blocking method, so you need some way of keep the process running. And because this is just a trivial example, we just sleep for 10 seconds and we stop it. But we have, out of the box, there's some code that Camel provides to you so you can keep Camel running. And then you can stop when you trigger JVM termination. Okay. So writing Camel. Okay, so how do we get started using Camel? Well, I guess one way is to go to the Camel website, and then there's a button here, download it today or whatever. And if you download Camel, it's a tarball or zip file, about 14 megs or something like that. The distribution have 3 directories. The lib directory has all the Camel components. There's some the doc directory is like taking all the content from the website and putting into a PDF file. And most interesting, then we have examples you can try. So let's try an example. To run example, all the Camel examples is Maven based, so it requires you to use Maven to run them if you're going to do that from the command line. But many modern Java editors, so Eclipse, IDE, and NetBeans, whatnot, they have Maven support out of the box, so you can use one of those editors to run them as well. So let's see. we'll start with a very simple example. It's called the console example. So it's basically reading from the console in, where you can type something, and then it transform that and send it out to the console. So just to show you how you can do that yourself also. So here I have, maybe, should I go a little down? So here I am untarring the, so here I have downloaded the tarball of Apache Camel 2.10.3. So here I'm extracting that. And inside the Apache Camel, as said, there was 3 directories. One is called the, just take a look at lib. So it has a lot of, all these, this is just the Camel components, but many people use Maven with Camel, so you don't necessarily need to download this distribution to get started using Camel, because if you use Maven, you can just use Maven dependencies, so Maven will download what you need for you. But what I want to show here is that the examples, if you want to play with examples, then you need to download this distribution, and then you need to compile these examples. So let's do that. Camel example, the console example. So what I use here on, let's see which way. What I'm using is Apache Maven 304 on Java 1.7. And inside each example, there is a README file. Can't remember if it, oh, sorry. And the README file will tell you how to run this example and compile and run it. There's usually, some of the examples have a different way of running it, so it can actually be a good idea to read them. Because this one, you need to type Maven exit Java to run it. There's another example which you need to type Maven camel run to run it. Okay, so what we do is to compile it. And then we can start it with exit Java. So here in the console, Camel spit out some logging information that is starting up and has been started up and whatnot. So here in the bottom it says enter something, so we can say type something. We like BS. And then of course it will send back the uppercase of that what you type. So yeah. So a true example. So how to, then you can press Control-C to stop the example. So let's try to see the source code of that one. And I am, doing this from using a Sublime text editor. I'm not, just to show you that you can use any kind of editor to see the source code and change it and compile it and run it. So you don't need to use one special tooling. You can use any kind. So this is a Spring Beans file. So there's the usual Spring stuff in the top. And there's a namespace here which declares this is the Spring XML we are using. So here we define an embedded Camel context inside the Spring file. And inside the Camel context, we can define routes. So here's the route for that. So let's try to change it a little thing. So we can say you set, and then let's lowercase it instead. And save the file, and then compile. You can actually stack the Maven commands together, so we will compile and execute the sample. And then enter something. Now it lowercases, obviously. Yeah, we rock. And of course it says that. So,
what was the expression language that you used? Was it Scala or was it something built into Camel?
Good question. So let's go back and look at the source code, because we are using XML here, so that we don't have a real programming language as per se under the top of us, and there's not, as you said, type completion or something like that. So we have to type it a bit more carefully. So what expression language were used to expressed as you said, and then lowercase something. And for that, you can see here something called symbol. Symbol is a symbol expression language that is provided out of the box with Camel. It's included in Camel core, so you don't need to add any additional express dependencies. And it was created from the very first version of Camel, and that's why the name is because it was so simple. And over the time, we have improved on it, and so you can actually execute methods on bodies. But you can choose to use something else if you want. Camel provides a number of, integrates with a number of expression languages like Spring expression language, ML, OGNL, Groovy, JavaScript. There's a number of them. I think we have about 14, 15 or so. Okay, just to complete the example, let's see, there's actually a main class in this one. This is the only Java class that is provided. So this example has one main class, and then it has this XML. That's the total. So here is the main class. This is a void main method. So what we do now is we want to keep this application running. So for that, we can use a class that is offered by Camel, a main class with an upper main. This one, this guy, allows you to tell it which Spring XML file to use. Then this one tells it to listen if the JVM is being terminated. Then I can trigger and stop myself. And this run method is blocking, so it will just keep running until you terminate the JVM or Spring is being told to shut it down. So this is one way you can have a standalone application that keeps running. Okay, so there's one more example that I kind of just want to highlight a little. There's a Twitter example that some people find funny to see. And again, there is a README file. And again, you need to compile it. And, oh, sorry. Maven compile exit Java. So this Twitter example is listening for tweets, people tweeting in real time about something, and then it displays those in real time in a web page. And you have to go to this link here. But I have to say there's a bug in this Camel version 2.10.3, so you have to, the welcome page is not enabled by default, so you have to type the real name. So it's localhost 1990, and then index HTML. And then it's, let's see what it does. So this is real tweets from the world about people talking about Gaga, Lady Gaga. If I type camel or something else, we can wait a long time before someone says something. So, but these are real tweets. Apparently, these are always very popular. And I had, I'm not showing it, but I actually had an application for the fun of it where I'm trying to listen between Lady Gaga and Metallica to see who wins, and then post a number for the last minute or so. But unfortunately, Lady Gaga is more popular than Metallica. Okay. I just encourage you. You can. This example is also documented at the website, so you can go there and read more how it works and play with it. Just wanted to show you how to start it. Inside Camel, there's many examples, and here are them. Some are showing how to use Tomcat and web service and ActiveMQ messaging and JMX and whatnot, and some of the patterns. So I just encourage you to, you can go and play with these examples and try them out. Okay, so let's get back to the slides a bit. This is the Twitter example. And yeah, please try the examples if you want. And you can even write your own examples. We love contributions. So what is in the Camel box? How much time do I have? 15 minutes. Okay, so just trying to highlight some of the key features that provides in Camel. At first, we have the patterns. So Enterprise patterns is in the Camel box. Then we have the, here's an example of those patterns. There's a solution here. We need to pick up a file, split the file on a line-by-line basis, convert each line to XML, and send to a message queue. So if you had to implement the solution using the patterns, then you will have the graphical notation in the top of those 4 patterns. And to implement that in Camel, that kind of maps one-to-one, so we have 4 code lines as well. Then, yes, in the Camel box, a lot of components. And just why do we actually have so many components? It's not like one guy can implement 120 components. No, it is the community. So a lot of people use Camel, and then they need to integrate it with something X, and then there's maybe not a component for it, and they maybe get permission to write a component in the company, and then maybe donate that to Apache. And this is what people are doing. And it's easy to write a Camel component because you already got 120 examples you can take a look at and see how they implement it. But we also provide Maven tooling to set up a new Maven product that is a ready-made component for you to use as a skeleton for creating new components. Then we have something called data format in Camel. Data format allows you to transform messages to and from well-known formats. Good example is XML and Java objects. So you can convert a Java object to XML and vice versa using a different data format. You can use JAX-B for that, Xstream, and some of the other ones. There's also for JSON and CSV files, and there's also something for compression and decompression and encryption and decryption. And again, you can build your custom data formats as well with Camel. It's just like a component. We talked about before that what was this expression language I showed you in this example before, the symbol. But here is the list what we provide out of the box with Camel. And Camel has the DSL comes in multiple programming languages like Java, of course, and as mentioned before, at the XML, we have Spring OSGi, but there's also a Groovy DSL. I have to say that the Groovy DSL in the upcoming Camel 2.11 has been improved a lot using some of the new stuff that comes in Groovy 2.0. There's a Scala DSL, and we also have a Kotlin DSL in the works, and possible future as well. Yes? Camel also offers a really good test kit out of the box. It has been doing that from the very first release. And we use that heavily to test Camel itself, so we eat our own dog food. So what is the test kit? Well, the test kit comes in, there's a number of Maven components for that. There's Camel Test Blueprint, Camel Test Spring, and Camel Test NG. The regular ones, they are based on JUnit. And Camel Test is a pure Java-based JUnit test. It doesn't have dependency to Spring or Blueprint, etc., because then you have to use one of the either one. So here is a screenshot from a unit test from Camel itself. So the idea is that you, let me use the pointer, is that you extend a class called Camel Test Support, so it's easy to get started testing with Camel. Then you can implement a route. Here we have an inline anonymous class where we have the route we want to test. And then we can, you may or may not use this, but here you can dependency inject endpoints and something called a producer template. Producer template is a client API that allows you to very easily send a message to any kind of endpoint. So this is the template we use to send a message to Camel. Here we send a message with a body and a header. And as you can see, because this is JUnit based, this allows you to integrate that with your editor. So just right-click and choose Run or Debug. And that's very easy. Camel allows you to manage it at runtime using JMX. And here's a screenshot of JConsole where you can kind of see your Camel routes, your Camel components, and you can control the life cycle, so you can stop routes at runtime and start them, but it also has performance statistics, so you can see how many messages has been processed, how long is the error response time, and so forth and so forth. There's also a REST-based API. But most people use the JMX one. Tooling. There is a product outside Apache called Hot.io. I guess in a couple of talks then, James Strachan, who's one of the key founders of Camel, he will talk about tooling with integration, and I'm pretty sure Hot.io will be on the agenda there. And for, as said, with Camel you can develop using any kind of tooling. You don't have to use a specific tool, or you can use Eclipse, NetBeans, or JBoss tools, or whatever you want to use. But if you want this graphical drag and drop environment where you can kind of wire together patterns using a graphical environment, then there's a tool called Fuse IDE, which is an Eclipse plugin. And here's a screenshot of that. And again, I think James will cover the tool as well. No, unfortunately not yet. It's the idea when you develop a plugin for a tooling, whether it's one of the other, then it's really hard to port that to the other one. So yeah, it will be nice. But I guess the web tooling is going to be powerful, at least for the runtime, so you can get information. So, but and you saw the Camel DSL was fairly easy to use. So what we see is that people might think this is really nice to use the drag and drop thing, but real developers, real programmers, they kind of want, real programming. Want to use Scala, want to use Java or XML. So after a while, you probably switch to just using without the graphical stuff. One feature in Camel is also error handling. This is very tricky to deal with in integration. So usually in the traditional Java programming language, an error manifests itself as an exception being thrown. And in the Java programming language, you have to try and catch. So you can try some logic, and then you can catch an exception if something goes wrong. And we sort of have the equivalent in the Java DSL. So we have a do try and do catch, where you can kind of just say, OK, if something in here goes wrong, then detour the message to the error queue. But now the routing DSL is sort of mixed between the happy situation and then the error handling. Some people don't like that, so we can actually externalize the error handler. So here we define an error handler in Camel saying use an error handler called dead letter channel. Dead letter channel is one of those patterns from the book, Enterprise Communication Patterns. And it says that, OK, if an error occurs, then deal with the error and move the message, send the message to this endpoint instead. So if here any exception is being thrown, then the dead letter channel error handler will kick in and send the message to this queue. You can configure this to, if you want to retry. So Camel allows you to define some retry policy. So maybe the error can go away. So you can say that please try again up till 5 times and wait 2 seconds in between. And then, so maybe it could be a temporary network issue. And then there's a whole bunch of other features and functionality in the Camel that Camel offers out of the box. I just want to put some keywords here, and if you want to explore and learn about that, you can go to the Camel website, and we have a little search box on the right-hand side, and then you can type in one of these keywords and find links to it. So deploying Camel. As said before, Camel does not have any container dependencies. So the idea with Camel is that you don't have to use a specific container, but you sort of embed together Camel with your application and then deploy that in the container as you wish. Then there's some perception people will have about Camel learning about this. They might think this is sort of like a server thing only. So you need to run in some server environment. But let's say that your boss comes to you and tell you, you need to write a little application that can upload this data to an FTP server. How to do that? So you can go on the Google and find some FTP libraries and figure out how to use these FTP libraries and write hundreds of code to connect to the FTP server and retry and upload the file and whatnot. But instead, you can also just leverage Camel as a client and then send a message to an endpoint. So here, we're doing that in these code lines. First, we create the Camel context. Then we create a producer template, which is that API for sending a message to any endpoint. Then we have our data somehow, and then the file name to upload. And then we construct the Camel URI, where we tell it's the FTP component. This is the FTP server. This is the username. This is the password. And you can have additional parameters. And then we use the producer template to send this body and header. And we have to use a header because we can tell it what is the file name to use. Okay. So just one last bullet is about creating new Camel projects. So how do you start using Camel and create a new Camel project from scratch? So what Camel offers is we have Maven tooling that can assist you to create a new skeleton project where a Camel is provided out of the box. You can do that from the command shell using this Maven archetype generate, or you can use it from the tooling, and I'm sure James will show you that as well. So Camel has a number of archetypes out of the box that sort of create products for different flavors. If you want to create a product where you need a ActiveMQ message program, then it's this one. If you're using OSGi Blueprint, if you're creating a new component, a new data format, and just a plain Java project, or Scala project, or Spring project, and a Spring DM is Spring for OSGi, and there's a regular web one, and this one is being deprecated, so don't use that one. So let's just see how you can probably create a tool in action. So, Maven has this single command. This is going to be your friend. In the earlier version of Maven, you had to type the full archetype plugin, whatever, blah, 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 blah. So it's a very long command. Nobody could remember what it was. So now it has an interactive mode. So it lists all these Maven archetypes that's provided out of the box from Maven itself, and there's a lot, 729. But it allows you to filter, so you could just type Camel, and then press enter. So then it filters all those that is related to Camel, and then we only get a much smaller number of lists. So if we want to create a product for, let's say, I don't know, your Blueprint, Camel, then it's number 4. There's a number here. Then you just type 4, I want number 4, then choose which Camel version to use. Let's take number 18, that's the latest stable release. And then you type in this is a group ID and artifact ID, this is some Blueprint stuff. And then you can just create it. And then there is a product, and as I said, there is a README file for these products as well, so you can read them, and then you have a sample product. Okay, so we are running out of time. Totally out? Yep. Okay. Yes, so if you have any questions, I'm around this conference, so you can just touch base there or reach out to the Camel community. Okay?
Oh.